Welcome to Programming Basics. I am your presenter, and I'm going to just cover some basic introductory topics to programming with no code in this presentation, so don't worry about having to understand any of that. Firstly, there's a few different language types, and by language types, it means the format in which you are typing the language. You have machine language, which is ones and zeros. It's considered the low-level language, and it is what the computer directly understands. So there would be, if you typed in ones and zeros and you put together a machine language program, there would have no compiling would have to be used. You wouldn't have to transform it into anything for the computer to be able to understand it. We have assembly language, which is essentially the midpoint in between the machine language and the high-level programming languages. And the assembly language is considered the mid-level, and it is a mix between readable code and more technical hardware functionality of using the language. So you still need to know about the hardware that you're using in order to use the assembly language. And then there's high-level programming languages, which are the common types of programming language you would think of when somebody says they're doing programming, like C# or Java or Python, or any of those more human-readable, easy-to-edit programming languages that when they are compiled and where you're editing the program, it gets built into whatever the computer needs to run it, so you don't have to worry about doing that part of it. Now, for the rest of the presentation, it is assuming we're talking about high-level programming languages and not assembly language or machine language. Now, there are some common data types that you would see in a programming language, and they change depending on which language you're using, but the base format, what they do, is still the same. You have integers, which are numerical values that are non-decimals. They have to be whole numbers, and they can be positive or negative. You have doubles, which are numerical values that do have decimals, and again, those can be positive or negative. You have Boolean values, which are true or false values. That's the only thing they can hold. Is it on or is it off? Is it true or false? You have a character, which is a single letter or single symbol. And you have a string, which is a collection of characters or like a sentence. So, hello world would be considered a string if you stored it all in one place. And then you have some mathematical operators, which are pretty much the same no matter which programming language you go through. You have your addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and your modulus operator. Now, the first four there are self-explanatory. You can add two things, you can subtract two things, you can multiply two things, and you can divide two things. But the modulus operator is essentially, it's division, but instead of taking the result, you take the remainder. And your addition symbol is used in a lot more places than just numerical operations. Say you have two strings that you want to combine into a longer string, you would put a addition symbol in between the two, and you would be adding the two strings together. And each one of these mathematical operators can be combined with, depending on the language you're using, a lot of them have plus equals or minus equals or multiplication equals. And instead of doing like A equals A plus B, you could just do A plus equals B, and those would be the same thing. And pretty much a lot of languages have similar aspects to handle addition and then just add a value to already existing value type situations. Moving on, there you have your logical operators, which are things like your less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal to. And these are logical operators you would find just doing regular math or any sort of logic. Is A less than B? And if that is true in a programming language, it will return a Boolean value of true. If it's false, it will return a Boolean value of false. These can be combined with your AND symbol and your OR symbol, which is the ampersand and the pipe for most languages. So the ampersand, and then you have the straight up and down line. So you can do two operations at once. You can say A less than B and B greater than C. And those logical operations are mainly used in the common conditionals that you would see across programming languages, such as if statements. If a conditional value is true, so A greater than B, you will run a certain part of your code. For loops will run a set of code multiple times until the condition is expired. And for loops are usually used for going through every single item in, say, a list or an array of items. So, and it usually has an incrementer or something that counts up or down every single time, and that gets checked against your final conditional value that tells it if it's going to continue or not. While loops will just run a block of code while the value is true. And that's pretty much all it is to the very, very basic programming concepts. Those are types of things that you will see across every single language. And no matter what language you're going into, those base ideas of you store data and you can compare data using conditionals and logical operators, and you use conditionals to organize the direction of flow. And make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.